Welcome back, everybody, to Too Much Popcorn, the movie review podcast where Jimmy and I sit down, we watch a movie, and then we talk about it. We talk about the things we liked, the things we didn't like, the highs, the lows. And this week we watched the hit 1986 film, The Highlander, the movie, featuring people such as Christopher Lambert, Mr. Krabs, and James Bond. Yeah, that's right. That's the guy who wrote all the Splinter Cells, Clancy Brown. He was in there, and then
Tom Clancy Brown. Yeah. There can only be one.
There can only be one. And then Sean Connery. He was there.
Indeed, they all certainly were in Highlander: the movie.
People, it could be said, people were in this movie. The movie was filmed and then put out in theaters.
In the year of our Lord, 1986.
There was hallowed ground where they were like, we can't do anything against this movie. It's got to just play. So then they played it.
You're going straight to hallowed ground already?
I know. I'm burning all my jokes. I already made the Mr. Krabs and Tom Clancy one.
I think you blew it all. I think we just have to talk seriously about this film now.
Ah, man. Oh, well, I guess all right. So what's it going to be? Is this a watch or a not watch?
Oh, we blew it all. No, I think this is my second time watching this film. I watched it on a lark at some point, and we came back to it tonight, and I said, this is the one we're going to watch, because guess what? We couldn't find Big Trouble in Little China. So we ended up on Highlander. It's a little peek behind the curtain there. So here we are in 1986 watching Highlander. Again, as we've described, we are cursed to enter the theater in a time machine, kind of Bill and Ted style, but we just watch a movie and then we talk about it instead of do cool adventures and stuff like that. So here we are, Christopher Lambert doing an accent for the whole movie, and he fights guys, kind of. And there's also a backstory where they're aliens, kind of, or they're just sort of extra-planar beings that exist at some point in time exist to there where there's only one of them, and because there can be only one.
Yes, this movie did a very good job of setting up a concept that seemed like it was going to be very cool and very interesting, and it seemed like there was all of this lore and backstory and rules and hoo-ha to it and magic and mysticism and ooh. And then it just didn't really present any of that. It was just kind of like, well, at some point Sean Connery will show up and he'll explain some things, but not many. And then the rest is just going to be you accepting the fact that there's immortals who have this drive to be drawn together, but also not really. And then they fight. And then there will be only one, because that's the tagline. And that's, like, it'd be like if all of the rest of the Terminator movies went off of the basis of I'll be back, and then they're like, oh, see, he was back. That was his whole thing. He said it, and then he delivered on it, and we said a thing, and we
Terminator
delivered.
1's tagline is I'll be back. Terminator 1, I'll be back. And you're like, what? And then Terminator 2 is, and you're like, oh, he came back.
Oh, dude, Terminator 1 would be wild if he like shows up in the first scene and he's like, I'm back, and you're like, what? And then, like, because it's all about time travel, like hour one into the movie, he's about to go back in time, and he's like, I'll be back, and then he shows up, I'm back, and you're like, oh, it all comes together.
Oh, that's from we saw that an hour ago. Whoa.
Yeah. But that's Terminator. We didn't watch that this week. We watched Highlander. Let's get back on track. Yeah.
Okay. So Fox McCloud is a Scottish man who refuses to die, but also at one point he does die, and then he is stricken out of his clan because he's filled with the devil. He's just so devilish, that guy. Nobody can come back from death. It's not allowed.
Yeah.
It's not. It can't be a miracle. It can't be good. It's only bad.
Yeah, the doctor leaves him and they're like, "Oh, he's dead," but you can still kind of hear him wheezing.
Yeah,
And then
it's
he comes back to life and everybody's just pissed at him. They're like, "Oh, how dare you still be alive?" And then he's like, "But guys, I thought we were friends."
You know what sucks? I feel like that should have been the beginning of the movie, but instead the beginning of the movie is this fucking wrestling match that we end up in the parking garage of where he has his first duel. And I've completely blocked that out as being the first part of the movie because it is this like cool action boss fight complete with like sprinklers and cars exploding and all this sort of stuff that you expect maybe about halfway through the movie or maybe like 30 minutes into the movie, but they give it to you so fast with no extra context besides the title of the movie existing and that there can only, you're sort of going into it like, so they're fighting like wrestlers fight, but their honor is beyond TV fame or any sort of thing like that. They're fighting for the honor of the universe, and we only can infer that because the Queen lyric, Masters of the Universe, plays during the intro credits where nothing happens. The intro credits are full on a black screen with text. So it's sort of, and I'd seen the movie before, but I forgot the sort of whiplash that you felt throughout the entire movie and that I felt rewatching it in just how poorly paced the entire film is, because not only are they doing these weird scenes in the present day where they're still sword fighting and he's still only can be wanting it, and how many duels has he done now over the thousands of years? Who could say? But the fact that he basically, the time between his past life and present life is so intercut that when we were watching it, Aaron literally was like, "Oh, we're here now and we're doing this." And he has a fish tank and all this sort of details that you gather about his life. But also the movie presents his current present life in such a boring way that the only time anything actually interesting happens in the present is when Clancy fucking Brown, Mr. Krabs, shows up, or like another Highlander shows up to fight him or be killed by Clancy Brown. Like literally, Lambert, Fox McCloud, that's his name now. Connor McCloud, with his weird accent and just off-putting coat choice, is the main character. He is the Highlander, and we're supposed to follow him. But all he does is sort of punch cops, which like cool, but also like he just doesn't do cool stuff enough for me to root for him throughout the film.
When I first heard about this movie, I think I had gotten some concept in my head about what he was going to be doing throughout the whole movie. So that when people ask like, "Hey, have you ever seen Highlander?" and I was like not wanting to be, uncool and be like, "Oh, I've never seen it." I was always just like, "Yeah, I've seen it. I know what that movie's totally about." So I had this concept that like, he was filled with this energy and like desire to be the best and to be like the best. And he,
the highest of landings.
Yes. And I had this like idea that he was filled with this desire to fight and go out and beat better and better and better fighters so that he could beat other people, other immortals, and become the only one. And so that's kind of what I was thinking this movie was going to be about. and so like at the very beginning when we see him at the wrestling match, I was like, all right, he's at this wrestling match because he sees these people as other fighters, and he's gonna like jump from the crowd into there, and then one guy's gonna go, "Bonesaw is ready," and then they fight, and then
the cage comes down. Yeah. Spider-Man's there.
So then I, again, had whiplash there where I was like, okay, so he's not going to fight these guys. And in fact, he's not going to fight anybody the entire movie except for Businessman at the very beginning.
Just business guy with a sword.
Yeah. So, I had whiplash there. And that's enough to say on itself, where it's just like, all right, we don't get him being a cool fighter the whole time. We just get him somewhat being confronted by one other immortal, and then nothing happening, and then finally fighting Clancy Brown at the very end.
Yeah, it sort of is that sort of upsetting reality of the film where in the first battle, he first is encountering Kurgan and in the the black armored knight, skull armor and shit like that. Everything. Clancy Brown is so fucking cool in this movie.
Oh, dude, he's so good.
His voice sultry, deep as hell, just a good guy. I mean, he's a bad guy in the movie, but goddamn, do I love Clancy Brown. Like, my God, this film fully, when I first watched it, I was like, he's the cool guy. Hell yeah, Mr. Krabs. But it's like you get Connor McLeod in this fight, and even the initial battle, people are avoiding fighting him because he has some sort of like bad stink about him. And he's like, no one will fight me. I wish to fight. And he immediately gets into a fight with Clancy Brown, and Clancy Brown fucking destroys his ass so bad that he dies. And you go, okay, well, there can only be one, and it should be Clancy Brown because he already killed you the one time. But you can't be killed that way because we establish it very early on. You can only be killed as an immortal if your head comes off in one clean get. So it's so weird to see to be on the side. That's the thing. You're forced to be on the side of this weaker character that, yes, it's sort of the underdog story, but he's also just such a wuss, and his voice sucks. And his accent is not Scottish at all. It's more like Tommy Wiseau in the room, like threw himself into a blender and then still like came out the other side, still sounding pretty much like Tommy Wiseau, but just a little worse. And every line he says is complete utter garbage, and it just cannot be. When you compare every word that he says against the fewer words more eloquently and cooler said by Clancy Brown, you go, well, the cooler voice should win. I've waited in my mind. We have the scales of fate here. Cooler voice should win.
This movie kind of did suffer from what I call Karate Kid syndrome, where, in the Karate Kid, you're watching the movie, you're like, oh, Billy Zabka, like he's the leader of like the Cobra Dojo, and like he's got the shit down and he's cool. But you're following Ralph Macchio the whole movie, and you're like, I guess. But like Billy Zabka's the Karate Kid. He is the kid who's doing the karate.
He's the kid.
There can be only one, and it's him in that movie. And so you want to follow him, but you're stuck following this other character. And it's the same in this movie, where you want to be following Corrigan because he's way cooler and he's doing cooler stuff. And you know what? He's out there killing other immortals. I'm not even convinced he's a bad guy in the movie. Like, yeah, he dresses like a bad guy and looks like a bad guy, but I'm not going to stereotype the dude. He wears a cool skull armor and he wears cool biker gear. Okay.
He is a bad guy. It is confirmed that he's a bad guy.
How many cops did he punch in the first 10 minutes of the movie?
You don't know how many cops he's killed over his immortal lifetime. Fully eviscerated.
We also got, Mr. McLeod, who's living at the 1%. He's a fucking 1%er. I'm not gonna fucking cheer for the billionaire.
It is upsetting because the movie establishes that he's really rich by giving him an elevator to his penthouse, and you're just like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
Fuck this guy.
And his fucking antique, little museum that he's got. Ugh. Get out of here.
He's trash.
So, yeah, you get Kurgan. He's a way cooler character. You want to follow him. He's doing what the movie should be about. He's battling people to become stronger so he can be the only one.
He's the perfect warrior.
And he does it throughout the entire movie, where if we're talking like a 1-for-1 level up system where you kill one person, you get a level up. He kills immortals, and he's like theoretically at level, like, I don't know. We saw at least 7 in the movie.
Yeah, like 99.
Yeah.
Who cares?
He's way
max
up there.
level.
And then McLeod, the only other person you see him fight other than the businessman is a normie, non-immortal who he doesn't actually kill. And it's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of missed opportunities at him being a badass, because the only time we ever see him using the skills is when he's learning from Sean Connery's character, who's an Egyptian Spaniard Sheogorath sort of mystical type guy.
Also a kind of stand-in for Mr. Miyagi. I'm actually, hold on.
Actually,
I'm now
this is Karate Kid.
This is,
yes.
I am now seeing more and more that this is
Sean
Karate
Connery
Kid.
is sort of the Mr. He fills the Mr. Miyagi type archetype, mentor archetype.
Yeah.
We can say Mr. Miyagi if you want. But he teaches Connor McLeod everything he needs to know about sword fighting, about being able to breathe underwater and laugh like a freak. And just sort of is able to convey all this information to Connor McLeod over the short amount of time they spend together, maybe a couple months. It doesn't seem like a lot of time, but he conveys very little to the audience into what they actually are. He just says they're brothers, they're united by this sort of eternal connection to each other and the need to fight. And Connor McLeod like almost slits his throat the one time when he's coming out of the water, but he doesn't actually, because Sean Connery's character is just like always one step ahead. And there's that one scene where Sean Connery is like, connect to the deer, to the elk. and Connor McLeod, I guess, does it, but they don't like, they just sort of are like, oh, well, the deer's like hungry and wants to run. And then they run down the beach. And so you sort of are learning that there's a power about like feeling emotions or connections to other beings. But as we said before, it's like so not described in any other way beyond right at the end of the buffer of the film. You get like one line where he's like, I feel everyone. All the presidents and like there's a concept, there's a deep concept in there somewhere that the movie has no interest in actually telling the audience about. It just is like, we'd actually just rather have this forensic scientist working with the cops fall in love with Connor McLeod, who goes by Russell Nash or whatever now. And her reasoning to like him is that he's mysterious and possibly a murderer. And beyond that, there's nothing else connecting the twain.
It is kind of weird because the movie almost wants, in the end, to have some kind of payoff for what he gained as the only one. As if, like, I need a reason to cheer for him being the only one.
Right.
And, this... I'm not even going to say this as a spoiler. It's the classic 1980s hero versus villain. We know he's going to win, so of course he's going to be the only one at the end of the movie. That's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Clancy
folks.
Brown wins.
Yeah.
The hero.
But the movie wants... It like tries to explain what he gained by becoming the only one, and it's very vague, being, oh, I can hear what everyone is talking about.
I can tell them, donkey.
And it's so weird. And all they needed to do was what they've already done, was sell me on the fact that there can be only one. And frankly, if it was like, all right, there can be only one, and now that you've done it, you've lost all your powers, boom, I'm sold on that too. You didn't. There was no reason to sell me on like, oh, he's now gained all these powers, except for maybe it sets up the other 3 movies that somehow were made.
Yeah, and a TV series spin-off sort of thing simultaneously being created. Yeah, it's weird because I think it feels like, just from a like perspective of a story of a ancient race of people who exist to battle each other to the death, to the pinnacle of the theoretical best one. Like most, the best one, the one who killed the most, or at least killed the stayed alive the longest. It's sort of weird because it's like, what I guess would get you to be the last one. If you live forever, you do have to kill all the other ones, because no one, like, they can't die. So you can't just like wait them out. There's no pacifism in this backstory here. So what the hell would Clancy Brown do with like, I can feel the presidents and I can talk to them, and like, would he have gotten the same power, or would the quickening, which is apparently what happens when you become the only one, would the demons all entering his body give him immense power and, like they say, plunge the world, plunge the mortal race into darkness or whatever. But it seems like his power is A, he becomes mortal and able to have children, and B, he can just sort of feel the emotions of the entire world.
Yeah.
You can just kill Clancy Brown. He becomes the one. He's like, ha 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 ha. It's me, Mr. Krabs. I'm the only one. I feel what you feel. And then the cops come in and just fucking like blow him away.
Yeah. Yeah. I was confused about that because it was just like, Sean Connery's like, well, if Clancy Brown gets it, he's going to plunge the world into darkness. But it's like, how?
He's just gonna keep killing people because he apparently was doing that regardless of whether he was the most powerful at all.
It was also weird. I also want to talk more about like just the whole concept of like there are immortals out there battling to become the best one, the only one. But
there can only be.
Sean Connery's just like, hey bud, get over here. I'm gonna teach you how to become like a great one.
He's already super strong. He has a fucking Japanese 7,000 steel folded Masamune sword, and he doesn't just fucking like whip his head off like immediately, and he's like, "Your woman is mine now. You're dead."
He fucking, by all rights of what the movie, it's a battle royale movie. The space gets smaller and smaller, and there gets to be less and less people until there's only one at the very end. It's a fucking battle royale.
There's a stinky poison cloud outside of the circle.
Yeah. And so it makes no sense for Sean Connery to be like, hey, man, I'm going to teach you how to play this game real quick. Go ahead, break down those boards so we can build a big tower, but there's no build anymore.
We're going to New York later?
Yeah. And then, McLeod also meets that other immortal who I can't remember his name, but he was also way cooler, way more interesting.
Some cool fantasy name, yeah. He was way cooler. And he got some like magical, not magical, but like a really sick sounding alcohol like called Boom Boom, and I was like, hell yeah, give me that.
Yeah, but they were also buds, and they'd been buds since the 1700s, and so it was like, what's everybody doing here where they all seem to be friends and they seem to like have this bond, but then they're like, oh, but fuck Clancy Brown, he sucks, he's he's weird,
he's Russian.
Yeah,
he's an ancient Russian. And he feeds children to dogs.
So it was just...
And it's 1986, so we're really in the Cold War. So all we have to say is he's Russian, and then all the audience goes, oh. Boo. Boo.
Yeah. So, not to get too far into, like, how to fix this movie, because there could have been so many things, but it definitely would have been more interesting to have, like, all of the immortals, they come together, they feel this draw to come together, and then they fight and they hate each other, and they're, all fighting to become the best one. And the more you kill, the more powerful you get. And
kind of, possibly.
Well, I would like to have seen it that way, like I've killed 17, I'm level 17. Oh, you've killed 18, you're level 18. You're going to be stronger than me, but I might be able to beat you.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He kills businessman in the parking garage, and a sort of magical sort of thing happens. All the cars sort of greet him as if they are his gentry, and they all spill their oil for him like virgins or virgin cars. I don't really know what's going on in that scene, but regardless, it doesn't convey that he became more powerful. It just is sort of like some energy transference is definitely happening. It doesn't feel like he's getting the guy's memories. He doesn't go like, oh, I know how to business now, or like something like that. It just is sort of like he absorbed some sort of energy of this dead immortal now. But we're not going to tell you, we can't tell you what it is because we, the filmmakers, do not yet know.
Yeah.
Either.
Like, again, if there had been an immortal who spent his whole life practicing the bow and was really good at archery, and then you kill him and now boom, you're really good at archery, that would have been cool.
Yeah, or but you know what, you can't famously can't decapitate someone with a bow and arrow.
Okay, yeah, fair, but they've
He's
been
like,
alive.
I trained my whole life for this, and then I died because some guy with a sword came and cut my bow in half.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been alive for thousands of years. Maybe he's bored and wants to become a
I get it. No, I totally get it. Yeah. He becomes
also,
really good at like forging armor or something.
Yeah. I also do absolutely love that, like, Clancy Brown is supposed to be like super tough and super cool. And, you know, he's wearing all this biker gear. And there's that one scene where he's alone in his room practicing the blade. And, he's, you know, he's got to prepare for his battle later. And, it just totally made me think of some weeaboo who, like, is a master of the blade. And
he's totally a mall ninja until Candy, the sex worker, comes in and is like, "Time to fuck you now," and he's like, "Yes, of course your name is Candy." And you're like, "Oh, he's really used to this sort of lifestyle." Okay, bud.
Yeah. But I wish they had given like him the overcoat and, you know, also a fedora, and it would have
think he should have had a cool. I think if James Wan had directed this one, he'd have the fucking saw. James Wan loves putting people in like hooded robe sort of trench coat sort of things. It's his favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think you put Clancy Brown in one of those things, that's a true gloves. I think he already had sort of like a cool chain glove and like another biker glove, all this sort of stuff. But there was something missing about the outfit to really tie it all together. Because the initial Clancy Brown sighting is bone armor, like skull helmet, all this sort of shit. And you're like, well, that's the cool guy. He's going to kill everyone. His armor's made of the dead people he killed already. And then he just sort of is like, well, I can't really afford to go to Old Navy because nothing fits me. I'm too big. So I just keep adding patches to my biker vest.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish there had been some more like laying into like, hey, we're thousands of years old. We got, you know, such and such piece of gear, and we're going to use that, you know, in our final battle, rather than I'm just going to show up in my chucks and my blue jeans and my leather jacket and I forgot my woman's overcoat at home. Whoopsies. But I do I do have my katana and my ninja rocks.
Yeah, there's an element to, I understand you want to look cool for the battle, but also if you are sword fighting, because you do know you have to decapitate your foe, would you not spend an eternity, most of your life, devising some sort of better way to do it? Like a trap of some kind where you walk Clancy Brown into a big box and he goes, oh, and it just gets like scissored off. Like,
also,
you live forever.
Yeah. And you know what? If I was showing up to a final battle that like the impetus was my head getting cut off, you know what I'd show up with? A fucking like Kevlar collar. Like a fucking steel bracer around my neck. I don't care how many swipes you take, you're not getting through that.
I got fucking carbon fiber, motherfucker.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Yeah.
I'd show up in a fucking turtleneck. You know, the movie would be them swiping. It goes clang. And they're like, oh, what? And, you know, and then I pull the turtleneck down. And I'm like, that's right. It's iron, baby.
Well, like almost worse is Clancy Brown almost was decapitated by Sean Connery in the past, and he has these huge scars to prove it because he was sliced so deep by the Masamune. He did not die because it was not fully decapitated. But wouldn't you after that, after hundreds and hundreds of years, be like, that seems like a weakness I should sort of figure out with maybe like a piece of armor or something? And he's like, nah, biker vest. Couple chainmail on my shoulders. I'll probably be okay. I not get decapitated anytime soon.
Yeah, maybe I should wear a chainmail hood that also covers my neck. Nah, actually, no, I'm good.
It would have been a cool set, costume design, I think, choice. Because there would have been a cool battle where he gets the sword, like the Masamune gets like shing shing, like sliced up against these chainmail things on his neck, and then you get Clancy Brown sort of looking at him and going, and then Christopher Lambert looks back at him and he goes, and then they sort of laugh at each other in this weird way. But we don't get that because they didn't decide to be smart at all.
Yeah. But you know what? We're going to be smart and take a listen to some ads.
Oh, I hope we get that chainmail neck brace ad that we were hoping for. Ooh, fingers crossed. Oh, yeah.
Man,
There's
1986 was a fucking wild time for movies, and it was a wild time for pacing in movies. I know we already talked about the pacing a little bit, but
there's so much more we can talk about the pacing.
oh, dude, I got RoboCop 2 vibes from this movie, where it starts out with like a really cool, set piece, action, blah blah blah. Oh, Judge Dredd, also, 1990s, but also same thing. Action, 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 boom, boom, boom. And then just, we're going to kind of whiplash you over here. And then, we'll whiplash back, do some more action, action, action. It was the late 80s. Everybody's doing lines of coke off the table. They came up with all, they were playing with their little G.I. Joes in the conference room. And they're like, okay, now, what if they did this? And then Sean Connery taught him to fight like a deer. And then we're going to go back and it's going to be a scene of him reading a book. Oh, yeah, that's it.
It's even worse because none of the characters besides Clancy Brown in the present are interesting
at all.
The forensic lady that he likes and eventually bones down, there's literally a scene where she looks at a computer and it has some sort of like isotope number or like mean average number or something on it. And you look at this screen and it makes no sense to a layman. And she's like, that's impossible. And you're like, what's impossible exactly? This makes no sense.
Yeah, they do nothing to explain that and explain why she thought it was impossible. Like, she didn't have like a piece of his DNA that showed that, he was 3,000 years old.
No, it's supposed to like be dating the steel in the sword or something, which is why she returns to the scene of the crime to pick it out of the parking lot pillar. But it's so boring whenever she's talking about that shit to any of the police or other forensic people that I like literally could not pay attention at all. And I was like, I know this is important for, I guess, how she learns that he's immortal, but he's just gonna tell her because he wants to bone her down so bad. And he's gonna bone her down so bad because part of this movie is just Christopher Lambert, Connor McLeod being so horny, and he wants to love. He just wants to love. And to the credit of the film, the Connor McLeod and his lovely wife in the past, they live a long life together. They get a sick Queen song talking about Do You Want to Live Forever? The Queen soundtrack is incredible. I want to talk about it forever. But the song during that sequence and just the sort of way that sequence is shot, I think is probably the best part of the movie and is not topped even by the final sort of scene or fight or anything. I think they finally were able to nail a sort of emotional beat in that scene that, as far as pacing goes, I think you include his entire backstory. I know you don't get the fun cutbacks to wrestling or him killing a businessman in a parking lot in the beginning, but I think you gotta stay in the past in the beginning and establish that he already has this sort of sad backstory and a reason to live and not try and like pursue other women in that way is because he goes through this tragic love and loss of this woman that he finds after he's taken away from his original people and crop and what all that sort of stuff. So there's an element that I think I really, when I first watched this movie, and now I'm like rewatching it, I'm thinking like that's the part I really liked and connected to because it was actually the most interesting. I still hate all the words he says. His voice is horrible. The funniest scene is he does go underwater and Sean Connery is like, you can't drown, you're immortal. And the movie, the editing of his dialogue doesn't make it sound like he's muted and underwater and like bubbles and stuff. It like doubles it, sort of like he's a flanger alien. And it's like one of the funniest things that's ever happened in a movie because it's like he is a guitar. He is like become a guitar. He's like 6 strings of a guitar laughing underwater, and it's so funny. So it's like I love that happened because it's then countered by this devastating scene of his old wife, like coming over the hill with a goat, and she's like all gray hair and has terrible old lady makeup on because it's the same lady. But he's the same age because he's just Christopher Lambert and he's immortal. And that's the only emotional beat that ever hits and lands in this, because when he comes to the future and he bones down this forensic scientist, there's no connection. There's no chemistry. She is not the same lady actress as his previous wife. There's no like eternal bond of love there. It just fails.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Yeah, I don't want to beat up on Christopher Lambert because I
do.
But yes, his laughs all were horrid, and I hated hear and his voice made him sound like the little alien that Ben Schwartz plays in their comedy. Magic. But I think I'm sorry, Christopher Lambert. My question is, how did you get cast in this movie? And
it's so mean.
It is. And I'm sorry, but like I think about like it was 1986. This is almost the height of action movies and like sci-fi action movies. Where was Arnold? Why did he not get? Why was he would have been perfect?
Too not Scottish, but also that didn't matter for Christopher Lambert either.
Yeah. If you want to sell me on a man who has been alive for 400 years and training to become literally the only one, Arnold or Dolph or Stallone, put one of the greats in there. Van Damme, I'll take him. Put somebody who looks like an action hero in there, and I would accept it a lot more.
Or just like a Scottish actor, like a jacked Scottish unknown.
Even why did they not have Sean Connery playing McLeod?
Sean Connery's existence in this film as an Egyptian Spaniard is the wildest decision yet. Still,
I know. I just kind of figured that they were gonna be like, oh, he was actually from Scotland and he's being coy. And that's why he's, he feels a brothership to McLeod is because he was actually Scottish. But, they didn't want to explain it. Whatever. That's okay. I'm not actually angry about that. I'm more angry about why McLeod's accent was 100% Scottish in the beginning and in all of the flashbacks. And then for some reason in the present day, yes, he does sound like Tommy Wiseau. Or the little alien from
What are you doing, doggy?
What are you doing? So they made no explanation for why he kind of talks like this, and I like to follow women and find them in the garages, and
Wait, he's the Simpsons character? Hell! Oh, they're gonna beat us up. Oh.
It was, and like, good for her for like seeing this man and like interacting with him and being like, yes, I am sexually attracted to this man.
To this reclusive weirdo.
Because their first interaction is a crime scene. She goes back to a crime scene where he was found. And then he shows up there later when she's there and is like, I followed you here.
I followed you and now I'm going to follow you to the bar.
Yeah.
And try and talk to you about Madison Square Gardens.
Yeah. And then he like knows her name at the bar, and he like drops something that like catches her attention as she comes over and he goes, oh, hi, doggy. And then.
Okay. So like, that's the thing. I so am unfamiliar with who Christopher Lambert is and sort of what his actual normal speaking tone is like. This could just be what Christopher Lambert sounds like.
And that's why I don't want to beat up on him. Because
I don't either. But my original review of this, when I watched it by myself, was you can't tell me that they had Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert acting across from each other. And Christopher Lambert doing his whack-ass Scottish-esque non-accent. And Sean Connery just like taking it. Like how much did they pay Sean Connery under the table to say nothing to Christopher Lambert in terms of how to be Scottish? You know, like there's just nothing there for his whole accent thing. And I just wanted him to sound normal. Like he lives in New York now. He's been around hundreds of years. He just now sounds like a normal New Yorker guy. Scottish.
There's other Scottish actors out there. You know, they could even done again. Dolph's got a little bit of an accent, but it would have sounded kind of good. Like I don't know.
It just didn't work, and he sounded like such a weirdo Dorcas.
It was amazing. I've never heard. My mind is boggled. I have never heard another person that sounds like Tommy Wiseau until today when we watched this movie.
Yes, there's literally shots in this where you could put Tommy Wiseau in there, and you're like, wow, he's in the room.
I would watch that edit. That'd be so good.
Oh hi, doggy.
Oh hi, doggy.
Mark, hello. Yeah. It just really was not good because he is supposed to be, and that's the thing. I guess we're placing our own sort of like what he's supposed to be, but the thing that is presented, the idea is that he is supposed to be the one, and we want the one to be the cool sounding cool guy, aka Clancy Brown. He should have won.
Yeah. Clancy Brown should have won. That's why I'm
sub him in for
it.
some hot Italians.
Yeah. You know, and like they could have put Clancy Brown as the main character and then had some other person be the bad guy. Have not Tommy Lee Jones. Darth Vader.
Oh, James Earl Jones. Another Jones.
Yeah, thank you.
And James Earl Jones is kick-ass in Conan.
Oh yeah. We've touched on
but that's the thing. I think you'd have two very similar, not similar voices, but like deep tone voices to choose between. And what a delight for the ears, but also would not make like a compelling dichotomous sort of relationship between the characters.
I would absolutely like think of how popular ASMR has become. When they reboot this movie, like think of like a full ASMR. Like they get Clancy Brown to be the hero, they get James Earl Jones to be the bad guy, and then you just get two very deep, melodious voices.
Ron Perlman shows up at some point. Yeah. You just throw them all in, and they're all just like, bleh, 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 bleh. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is a great movie, guys.
Yeah.
Christopher Lambert shows up, and you're like, get out of here. Stupid voice. I'm going to beat up on him. I can't help it. It's literally the only thing that was just so... It was all very distracting, and the main thing is there was such competent filmmaking in so many shots that was then undersold or sort of like undone by something stupid that also happened. Like the entire sequence of Sean Connery fighting Clancy Brown in this crumbling tower was one of the most badass. It does look a little goofy, kind of like foam rocks at some point, but it all is sold really well, and the effects are like they clang the swords against the wall, and then the wall like explodes outwards or inwards or something like that. It was a cool ass scene, and there's a like lightning storm forming around them. It was great.
The stuff that's done well in the movie is done really well, and when they do the goofy 1980s sci-fi bullshit, like it's really cool, and I freaking and they did a cool montage of like teaching them how to be a fighter, and they do it in this beautiful backdrops of Scotland, and you're like, oh yeah, give me more of that
on rocks and stuff. Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, they do the cliff where they throw the sword off, possibly by accident. I don't know.
To its inevitable end, which I guess they get it at some point because they did have it.
Yeah, and I would say, is the fighting in this movie stellar? No, but for like 80s, yeah, it's pretty good, and like
it's just clunky.
Yeah, it is clunky, and I could see a reboot like doing it better, especially if you have the John Wick director.
Director of John Wick with like Henry Cavill at the helm. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe if there's a movie like that and
in the works, maybe it'd be really cool if that happened.
Yeah, But, for what it was, I think they did the fights pretty well. The fight in the the garage where the guy does 80 backflips, hilarious, but kind of cool. And
Pretty
I'll
good.
remember that. And
He does keep backflipping despite all odds.
And reason.
And boss fight's pretty cool. It's in like a window, like cool lit area that they like fall into after creating like a waterfall from the water tower and unexpectedly fall through the glass. I think that was pretty cool. But like big wide open big boss battle vibes where you were in this like actually cool environment. It's the problem that I think a lot of even what I run into when trying to run like a combat encounter in like D&D or something, right? Is you're like the easiest way to have people fight somebody is you like put them in a big room and then there's like a boss and minions and like that's it. And like there's a couple columns. And then every time there's a more interesting combat, it's because there's like a scaffolding somewhere or a staircase going up to a different level where there's other enemies up, like that is all like dynamic combat like that is always more interesting to watch. It's always more interesting to just sort of like, I would imagine it would be more interesting to choreograph, more difficult to choreograph, of course. I think the whole scaffolding scene is probably really intensely just like probably extremely dangerous too because they have like water and like all this like set stuff.
They had the like letters falling off of the electric sign into water, and I was like, yo, I'm getting kind of stressed out for this because that's water and electricity. People die.
Do sparks like into the water like 100 times, and the swords are like absorbing it or something because they like glow blue. And then Clancy Brown like does a spiral into the water, and there's this like red sunlit sort of, or like I don't know, sundown sort of thing going on. And you're like, well, that was unnecessarily terrifying of you to do, Clancy Brown. And then he springs up out of the water, and you're like, that's why you did it. It's good.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it was kind of all places they could have done a final fight. Big empty room. A little underwhelming, but all like it sold the point, and I think having the backdrop be lit behind them was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it ends with like I think the rest of the budget of the movie goes to like cool sort of drawn over demons and shit, and all the glass exploding and stuff like that. There's a coolness to that finale that then is undersold by like we went back to Scotland, and I talked about how I can feel the diplomats.
Oh no, he talked about how he could feel the diplomats.
I can feel their emotions. But yeah, at the end of the day, Aaron, we have to make a decision based on this movie, Highlander 1986. Are you telling somebody to watch or not watch the film?
Man, when it comes down to it, don't watch this movie. I'm sorry. It's one of those things where it's one of those cultural touchstone movies, right? Everybody knows that phrase. There could be only one. And like anytime you have that joke about Highlanders, that following phrase always comes out. There can be only one. And for some reason, moms apparently love this series and they get really horny, even though I never saw him time travel once. I don't know what that's about, but apparently he time travels.
Might be in the later ones or the show.
But yeah, so they get really horny for him, and I don't get it. I don't feel that same appeal about Tommy Wiseau. So don't watch the movie. There's not enough there. There's the lore's not there. The action's not there. Clancy Brown loved him, absolutely loved him. Give me more Clancy Brown. Hollywood, if you're listening, I know that the Screen Actors Guild is still on strike. I don't want to, take
more time
sides.
to listen to podcasts.
Yeah. Clancy Brown, come on this podcast. We'll love to have you.
You have to pay like $7,000
to get on this podcast?
For him to get on this podcast.
He's paying us?
No, we would pay. He puts out like an eBay thing, and then everyone bids on it. It's $7,000.
I'll pay him. I'll pay him $7,000. I'll save up.
What a deal.
Yeah. Clancy Brown, if you're out there, I will pay you $7,000 to come on our show for an entire episode.
Aaron's paying it. I am not doing this.
So you were great. Clancy Brown, you're out there. I know you're listening. You were great in this movie. And I'm sorry that I'm telling people not to listen to this, but
And you continue to be great.
yes, John Wick 4. But
Wait, is he in John Wick 4?
yes, yeah, and he's
Dude, he'll be in the new Highlander.
yeah, no spoilers. But I was so underwhelmed by this movie, and not the whiplash of, going between action and non-action. I was just so underwhelmed by the concept of this movie and what ended up ultimately happening in this movie, and the hero of the movie, that there was nothing there. And soundtrack, amazing. I heard the first song. I forgot who. I said, "Is this Europe?" Jimmy, you corrected me. You said, "No, it's Queen."
And then Queen showed up on screen.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh, please give me the full soundtrack as just Queen." And you said it is, and I said, "Oh." It made me think of the Flash Gordon movie and how good the Flash Gordon movie is, because it has the Flash Gordon song that is literally one song that they play 10 different times, a la Transformers, the animated movie.
Transformers!
And, I was like, nothing could be better than one Queen song 10 times. What is this? That thing you do? So,
But no, you get like 10, you get like 6 different Queen songs that all rip.
Yeah. And you know what? Not hot take alert. They're fucking bops. All of them.
Bangers.
So, yeah. So go listen to that, but don't watch this movie. Jimmy, what do you think?
All right. So the funny thing is I watched this the first time. I was distracted. I think I probably watched it while working. So it's sort of like I'm paying attention to it. I'm getting the beats. So I went into this being like, there was enough in the film that I remember enjoying and laughing at, or, connecting to an emotional beat or something like that Aaron should watch this. So that was my initial, I gave it a watch, right? But at the end of the day, giving my full attention to this movie was agonizing. And I have to switch my opinion from the beginning of the movie to now, having watched it fully, giving it my full undivided attention. It is a not watch. I unabashedly love how dorky and stupid it is, and the sword fighting, it's literally like, watch a modern man fight with a sword as if he were in the medieval times. And there's something very fun and goofy and comic booky about that concept, to a Queen soundtrack that rules. Every song is so good. Do You Want to Live Forever is one of my favorite songs of like all time. It's so heartbreaking and emotional, and Queen just fucking killed it. There are some amazing shots and transitions and filmmaking in the film, but Christopher Lambert fucking sucks ass in this movie so much that he takes the titular Highlander character that is supposed to be the one that you root for and hope to win, and he takes the Masamune from his dead mentor and pledges to defeat Kurgan and all this sort of stuff, and on paper it sounds great, but when you put it on a fucking movie with Christopher Lambert as the main character, you get one of the worst performances that cannot carry it at all. And so it's a not watch definitively. I hope no one is ever forced to see this movie again, because I wish it was a watch so much, but I cannot in good conscience tell people to watch this movie.
Bee boo, bee boo. Wow, that's a first, folks. We got our first switcheroo. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes we watch a movie, we say, hey, watch it. Then we watch it later and we're like, oh, don't watch that movie. And that's what this was.
It is a consensus. Blah, 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 blah. Not a crisis mode.
Not a crisis
mode.
Yeah. No, you're right. Don't watch it. It's not worth it.
I really wished it was. There's so many elements, and I hope if it does get remade, as I've seen rumors with Henry Cavill and the director of John Wick series, I think we could have incredible sword fighting technique. I think it could be conveyed with modern practical effects mixed with a good amount of like fun sets and go back to Scotland if you're doing the Highlander. It's beautiful country and it deserves to be on film all this time. And go, you could get the Queen soundtrack. Get people to do Queen. Was it like Adam Lambert does like a really good Queen impression or something, and like they have him sing Queen songs or whatever? Fucking get that rockin' Queen soundtrack back into the theaters, and I think the new version would kick ass if the pacing does something that this movie sort of had. There's a good movie in here somewhere if you pluck Christopher Lambert out of it and like throw some good actor, or even like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I would not say is a good actor, but I think would be better as like a cool sword fighting guy.
I got one more take.
All right.
This movie just ultimately felt like what everybody feels when you take an anime and then adapt it to real life. It 100% felt like a manga that became an anime that became a real life show or movie.
It kind of does.
And it just, it's like the source material was in there, but just poorly translated to screen. And yeah, like we said, don't watch it.
Because it feels like it would be a comic book or graphic novel before this, but I think the screenplay is like the first iteration of this idea.
Yeah.
But it should be like Highlander the movie based on Highlander, the more fleshed out graphic novel that already exists and is like paced better.
Which again, why did they have to specify the movie?
Highlander the movie.
Was there something before it?
I don't know. Highlander the show.
There was nothing before
release. Yeah. No, I don't think so. It is weird. But here we are.
Yeah.
At the end. Aaron, consensus mode once again. It's good to be back.
Yeah. You scared me there for a second. I thought we were going to be in a crisis mode.
I honestly, before watching this movie, I thought I was going to say, hey, I think this is up my alley enough to, blah, blah, blah. Couldn't happen though. I honestly, I think my full undivided attention on this, and I'm still like, this is so boring. I'd rather be working. Oh no. So thank you so much for listening to Too Much Popcorn. That's the show Aaron and I have just done for you, where we talked about the movie at length. We ate too much popcorn. We feel real sick. Boy, oh boy.
I feel so, and it wasn't somebody's laugh that made me feel sick. It wasn't Christopher Lambert laughing that.
No, Christopher Lambert's laugh brought me back from the edge, but then I was taken out again because he just said words instead of laughing, and I'm like, you should just laugh more, Christopher Lambert.
Yeah.
But instead we're here.
He said, give me sugar water.
I can't believe you think... I think that is Vincent D'Onofrio.
It's the same guy.
It's not, though, at all.
But I'm pretty sure it's Vincent D'Onofrio playing Christopher Lambert.
You think he is wearing a Christopher Lambert suit like an alien wearing a Vincent D'Onofrio suit?
1,000%.
Sugar. Water. Thank you so much for listening. Leave a review on wherever you're listening, and we're still pushing for those Spotify listens, subscribe or whatever. Leave a 5-star on there, and thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.